Eddie's one. Can you open us with the pledge since you've got the flag, please?
Actually, let me share my screen and I will bring it up real quick.
Ah, perfect.
Okay.
1 second. Oh, there it is. Okay, can you see the flag?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Have an official
All
flag.
right.
Okay.
I'll stand in.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To
of
the
the United
flag,
States of
United States of
America
America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
God.
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
with
liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you, Eddie.
You're welcome, Mark.
There's a little bit of a protocol. You may have noticed that we all kind of echo each other on Zoom. So some meetings, everybody's muted except the person leading the pledge. Other meetings, like each other. Normally, we use a former method, but I forgot. And kind of cool to hear everybody else, I think, in the pledge. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here in the summertime. We all have lots of things to do, especially when it's more light, more energy, more everything. And we have 3 new members. I see Morris, and DeWitt is not on, I don't think. I'm looking.
No, DeWitt's not here yet.
Okay.
And I don't know if he will be joining. I didn't have a chance to reach out to him specifically, but I hope he'll be here.
Okay, very good. And I see Robin. So Morris, could you just introduce yourself to us, and tell us about yourself and your connection with the Delta, please? And then Robin, I'll ask you the same question.
Is that 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 10 words, or let's see. I'm born and raised in Sacramento. Even when I was young, I picked fruit off those trees and some of those farms in the Delta area. I've always fished in the Delta, on the boat, not on the boat. I'm currently the judge advocate for the Sacramento Yacht Club. I'm a PICYA, Pacific Interclub Yacht Association delegate for Sacramento Yacht Club, Sportsman Yacht Club in Antioch, and the Ben Ali Shrine Yacht Club. I'm currently the president of the Sacramento Historical Society. Let's see, I've sold property in Cortland, Rio Vista. I go to little things that they have in regards to commercial property on what they're trying to enhance in the Contra Costa Delta waterways area of how they're trying to improve all of that. So what else can I tell you? And I'm up and down the roads along the Delta and watching how it just seems to me it's slowly turning into what Carmel used to be many, many years ago, and what all along Highway 1 used to be as more and more tourists come into the area.
And I should add that Morris was appointed as a Delta Recreation representative, and we welcome him.
Very good. Morris, thank you. Sounds like you'll have, I hope you have a lot to say, and those perspectives are really very important. Robin, you're next. You're welcome. Robin, Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Robin Brown, and like Morris, I was born and raised in the Delta in Walnut Grove, actually. Left for 20 years, to go to college and start a family. And then when the children were all little, 3 children, I decided I wanted to raise them in the Delta. So we moved back. My family's been here since 1879, farming. So it's a long history for me here. I love the Delta, of course. I've always done lots of boating, water skiing. I'm on as a business member. Is that right, Eric?
That's right, representing Delta Business.
Yes, representing Delta Business. Well, I have some numerous rentals, and then also I started and my daughter has joined me, a venue business on our property called Retreat to the Farm. Oh gosh, lots of weddings, of course. Sometimes the city of Benicia has come and done a done a retreat. Lots of tech groups have come and had retreats there. So that's pretty much my current business experience or business venture with my daughter, which is fun. Yes, I'm glad to be on DPAC. I've followed you guys a little bit and just so glad to be a part of it.
Thank you, Robin. Welcome. I'm really glad that you're on. What part of the Delta do you live in?
Walnut Grove.
Walnut Grove. Okay, very good. Not too far away from where I am in the picture behind me. So up in Clarksburg.
Unfortunately, I can't see anybody, and I'm not able to. I came by via phone, and I'm not able to get the photos up. So apologize.
No, don't worry.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, would you like me just to quickly run through the committee members who are present to just make it?
Yeah, let's do that. I forgot to do
Self-introduction?
it. We should do it.
Yeah,
Yep,
so
a
just,
quick- thank you very much.
yeah, for terms of a roll call, Chair Mark Pruner is here representing Delta General Public. We just met Robin Brown representing Delta Business. Lindsay Liebig and Craig Watanabe represent Delta Agriculture. Craig, as you know, has been on the committee for a while, but he was just appointed to fill one of the agriculture slots by the commission. Todd Bruce and Morris Lum, who you met. Todd didn't speak up, but they both are our recreation representatives. Chris Elias, representing Delta Flood Entity. Mariah Looney, representing a Delta organization. Edward Hard and Gina von Klompenberg, representing state agencies. And the commission appointed Greg Erickson, who until tomorrow is the Cal Fish and Wildlife Regional Manager for Region 3, which is the Bay Delta region, but he's retiring after tomorrow. So we appreciate that Gina, who has been participating in the place of Jim Starr, who's also on a path to retirement, that she has been participating and that she will continue to participate until Cal Fish and Wildlife has a permanent proposed member for the DPAC. Moving on, Jim Cox, representing a Delta Habitat and Conservation non-governmental entity. Sam Garcia, representing Delta Utility and related infrastructure. And I'm also expecting Russ Ryan, representing the Delta Water Exporter. He's not on the phone yet. And then finally, Douglas Shaw, representing the ex officio member, representing the Delta Cultural Preservation entity. And then in addition, we have Daniel Welsh from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Mario Manzo from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. They are also ex officio members. So that's who we have on the meeting. We have 11 DPAC members present currently.
Very cool. Mario just joined us with a lot of water and blue in the background, so very appropriate. Let's go to what has customarily become our first item, which sets the tone, brings us up to date, keeps us informed, and that's the water conveyance, the contractor's DCA, as it's commonly known. Lindsay, there you are. Are you good to go to give us a little update? Or Jim? Let's see, start with Lindsay and then go to.
Yeah, no, this
Lindsay,
meeting, Lindsay will be providing the report, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Oh, let me grab my notes. Where did I put those? Okay. Can you hear me all?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this meeting, I would say, was very short for a DCA meeting. Typically, we're really always pushing full 3 hours. This one ended, I would say, early within the just over the 2-hour mark, which was interesting. So really kind of didn't talk into a lot of detail about a lot of specifics, more kind of some general updates on things. They are looking at adjusting the DCA committee structure. We've had quite a few members leave the DCA committee because of the community benefit program, and a lot of members don't want to stay on when they're asking this committee to kind of weigh in on community benefits because they don't agree with the project and having some ethical things there. So several members have dropped off, so they're looking at adjusting some vacancies and things so that it doesn't affect quorum issues or anything like that. Not this committee votes on anything in particular, but they're doing some restructuring there. With the EIR timeline, they are looking at doing, they're right in the stage right now of compiling tech reports and the impact and mitigation analysis. So still, they think they're on track to release an EIR in early 22. What actual direct time frame like that they haven't released, but they keep saying early 22. They did go through some design updates, including an updated design for the South Delta connection, a realignment of the ring levee at the Twin Cities complex that in particular removes the connection to Dearson Road and has some better flow and spacing around I-5, as they claim, or around the I-5 corridor area. And then also some changes to the southern forebay footprint, including reducing that size a little bit and changes in RTM storage where some permanent sites and temporary sites are going to be, so kind of movement in there. The environmental justice survey that was being conducted is now available on the DWR's website. That was conducted by Ag Innovations and is available there to be reviewed. Part of the community benefits has, part of that process has concluded. They have concluded their survey portion as well as the workshops. They are moving into more small group outreach and engagement and still gathering data before they do an actual presentation of a community benefits program. Looks like that will come out either in tandem or close to with the EIR. And then they are going to be doing some EIR informational webinars coming up. There's going to be a series of 4 of them. On July 14th will be one that's overviewing the State Water Project and Delta Conveyance. On August 3rd, one specific on fisheries. August 25th, one specific on climate change. And September 16th, one focusing on environmental justice. And so information is on DWR's website. I'm able to sign up for those webinars, but they'll all be conducted virtually and be more information sharing around those topics. And then some future topics of board meetings include more of the community benefits program, some additional engineering updates, and then subsurface investigation updates. I think we're in a little bit of a retooling right now with the DCA committee, in part due to the change in leadership with Catherine Mallon leaving as executive director and having Graham in as interim. Additionally, we've had some board member changes at the DCA board level and additional people leaving the stakeholder committee in general. So I think we're a little bit in flux. Still kind of interesting, you know, like we've talked about this entire time, is what's really the goal of this committee, the point of this committee, since it's not, you know, subject to CEQA and all of those things. And so it's been a lot of updates, but we're not in the more technical, heavy things like we were in the beginning of this committee process. And so I think it's more smaller updates and things, and just kind of running by some structural and engineering updates as they're given. So that was basically last week's meeting. Jim, do you want to add anything, or Douglas, from your perspective?
The only thing I would add was that on that ring levy, that if I understand what they were saying, which I'm not technical, so sometimes I get lost in this stuff, but it sounded like what they were building was a levee to protect their drilling. And should there be a flood, this is the area, you know, an area that would stay dry. What a lot of the locals from that area that are on the committee were saying is that sort of thing in the past has just, yes, there's one area that stays dry, but other areas then get even more flood water. And so I don't know if that's really a great idea or not. It seems to me that, yeah, you're going to protect your investment. What about everybody else that's in the area? And so, which to me has been more or less their theory on all of this. But, you know, that I really had some questions about. Douglas, you have anything?
Yes, actually, I agree with you. And actually, on that day, I made a point that, I see that the rain levy is up to the 100-year protection, flood protection level, but the most of the levee in the Delta are way below the 100-year protection level. So, I mean, they should pay more attention to the levees in general in the Delta rather than their little fortress. And then I was responsible to report the April 28th meeting. And I don't remember I talked about the change of leadership, the Catherine Malone resigning and replaced by interim director Graham Brenner. So we didn't talk about it. And I don't know whether this is a good sign or bad sign in terms of being favorable to the Delta for the change of leadership. Yeah, but otherwise, James and Lindsay, you guys have covered everything.
Lindsay, I have a couple of questions on my side about the environmental justice survey. Do you recall when the deadline for comments to that survey will be?
I don't offhand, but I can look it up right now in my notes. So.
And then if you could just give us a link, because I think my experience in the past in dealing with the DCA is that the environmental justice survey was concepts in that zone were the weak point in the process a few years ago, and they are the most important place where opinion and impact on communities can be expressed and solutions can be shared. So if at some point during the meeting, yes, sorry.
Yeah, I have the reports here. I'm not sure if they're taking public comment. You can view the survey in that, but I'm not sure they're seeking actual public comment or anything of that. I think they're just posting their findings. But I will definitely share that link right now here in the chat so that everybody has that.
Great, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments on the SEC Stakeholder Engagement Committee report? Thank you guys for doing that. I think it's really important. As Douglas said, with Catherine resigning, she struck me as somebody at least who said that she was very concerned with making sure that the communities in the Delta that were negatively impacted, that their needs could be addressed, and an engineering solution could be worked on or achieved or built in. So we'll see what the new leadership is all about.
Mark, this is Eddie.
All right. Hi, Eddie.
Yeah, I've got a question. Are any Delta residents on the Delta Conveyance Authority?
On the actual authority, the actual DC-DCA board, no. The DC-DCA board is made up of all of the metropolitan, Santa Clara, all of those actual entities that will benefit from that. They've utilized this stakeholder engagement committee as a Delta voice, and that is made up of all Delta residents and representatives. But nobody on the DCA board is or ever will be a Delta resident. It's going to be just the beneficiaries of the project.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Eric, I see we have somebody with a phone number ending in last four digits, 5402. Could we just ask that person to identify themselves and we put your name down?
That's Matt Conover from Twin Cities Road, across from the proposed conveyance tunnel launch area. Looking to hear about any revisions to the routing and mapping of that.
Lindsay, I think Matt was asking where to go for the latest revisions.
Yeah, there definitely is revisions to that, and I can also share that in the chat. My chat is only going to Eric though, so I don't know if Eric, you need to open that or you're going to send that out to everybody. Either way is fine, but I'll send a link of the current updates that talk about that Twin Cities complex and some changes. It's minor changes to it's really changes within the footprint, not necessarily changes to the footprint for the Twin Cities complex. So it is not a, where they're proposing the Twin Cities complex to be is the same area. So.
I had heard that they were going to do a lot more up on Lambert Road and do some kind of a north-south haul road on the west side of Snodgrass Slough and Pearson District, and take out 2 overpasses over I-5.
Yeah.
I'd have to look back. Yeah, I'd have to look back at all the mapping and everything like that. That's something we could definitely look at offline, and we can connect you with the right info.
Okay.
Yeah,
Matt,
Matt,
you've got Lindsay's. Go ahead, Eric.
I was going to say, Matt, if you haven't, all these materials that they present at these stakeholder engagement committees, they post them on the DCA website. Every time I say that acronym, I can't define what it means. Anyway, I think you know where to find that. But if you want to see any of these materials that are presented, they do post them not before the meetings, but after the meetings.
Yeah, right during the meeting. Really.
Usually right during the meeting, but for what Lindsay's describing, you might want to look online and check out what they have there.
I did that for the engineering division, and it was blank. They said changes are coming.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Matt.
you.
I guess we don't have that. Yeah, no update specific to your question here. Okay, item 3. So we've got Eric. Can you introduce the updates to Vision 2030?
Yeah. While I'm doing that, let me pull up onto the screen the document that I sent around to everyone. I hope you've had a chance to review it. I'll do my best to scroll to what we're discussing so you can all see it if you don't have a copy in front of you. Vision 2030, this is Vision 2030. It's the Commission's strategic plan. It was adopted by the Commission in 2015. And we're more than 5 years into it. When the Commission staff initiated the review of that document, we were 5 years into it. We're a little over 6 years into that document now. And so it always is a good idea to review your strategic plan document and determine if it's still appropriate for the organization. In this case, what we are proposing for revision are the strategic objectives. So this Vision 2030 has a lot of different sections. There's a timeline of important activities. There's a vision statement and mission statement. We're not proposing to make any changes to those. We do, however, propose to make changes to the strategic objectives on the strategic themes. And so we have 7 strategic themes: water, agriculture, levees and emergency response, regional economy, Delta heritage, recreation and tourism, and finally, education and outreach. And so these strategic themes form the basis of our Commission staff's implementation plan. That's the day-to-day work we do to advance the Commission's strategic objectives. But it all begins with these strategic objectives, and in reviewing them, initially at the staff level, and then with some assistance from DPAC and from even the general public in the Delta, we have proposed a series of edits. They basically are along one of 3 lines. One is just kind of a general cleanup of, condensing and making the statements a little clearer and brighter without really changing their emphasis. The second set of changes is to remove strategic objectives that either have been accomplished, and we'll, give ourselves a big round of applause for that, or that we feel are no longer strategic, and that in that case, that is indicated in the margin notes on this document. And then finally, addition of strategic objectives that that we believe are, even though they weren't addressed in 2015, we believe they are now important for inclusion within the Commission's strategic plan. So what's on the screen, and maybe what you all have spent some time reviewing, is a red line of the proposed strategic objectives, and by section, and then margin notes indicating why the change is proposed. And that's really, I think, the background to present to DPAC. Our hope is to bring this to the Commission based on the discussion we have on this item this afternoon, to bring this to the Commission for their consideration, perhaps with some edits and changes based on the discussion today, and to ask the Commission to adopt those revised strategic objectives. And then, of course, we will use those as the basis for our staff implementation plans. So I think that's the background I wanted to provide, Mr. Chair, on this document, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Eric. I have one other preliminary comment to make. Barbara Daly, our committee vice chair, couldn't be here. She's on vacation. She had sent Eric an email yesterday, and I just asked, I asked Eric to forward that to everybody so that you could see what her concerns are. I think in general, she was asking for a delay in our consideration of this to get more input, especially with regards to protection of agriculture and farmers. And she wanted a little bit more robust wording having to do with maintaining aesthetic beauty in the Delta. And she wanted to look at the EPA survey. So I want to make sure that you had her comments, especially in writing, from Eric. Thank you, Eric, for sending those out. But let's proceed with Eric. Why don't we do this, and with committee's permission, if we just go through each section, maybe not jump around a little bit, but try to focus on one section at a time. So starting with water on page 1, we see your comments. Anybody have comments, questions, suggestions on the water section of the updated vision? Everybody's all good with that, I think. And we can come back to this. We're not closing doors here. Agriculture.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I'm going to be silent, but I will try to review it and get to Eric written comments.
Okay, Eric, can you just make a note to maybe email Matt the document we're working on when you get a chance?
Yeah,
Thank
Matt,
you.
if you could put your, if you're joining on computer, if you can put your email address in the chat, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Matt. Okay, any comments, questions, changes, suggestions in the agriculture section at the bottom of page 1? Yes.
I just had one on the water section.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I didn't realize we jumped to ag already. Sorry. Just 1.1. Is it the assumption from the commission and the staff that dissemination of products would solely be borne by the commission, or would it be done in collaboration and cooperation with other agencies?
The latter, Eddie.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really why the addition of the word disseminate. It's possible that we could create them, but
okay,
we're really kind of venturing out of our expertise as commission staff to try to create those documents. But if others do, and we can help spread the word about it, that would probably
Okay.
be a more appropriate role for the commission.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, Chris, hi.
Okay, hello. So in looking through the revisions, the one thing I thought maybe it would be helpful for us to also consider, as far as the water is concerned, and maybe even some other elements of this strategic objectives, is the realization about the impact of climate change. And it doesn't jump out at me. So unless there is some other place where it's kind of embedded, I thought we need to call it out because it's very important for us to be able to align this document with the Governor's Water Resilience Portfolio document that got released last year. And that one has, Delta, prominently featured in that document. And it also speaks to the importance of acknowledging climate resiliency to climate change, especially in the Delta, and then the benefits, and then things that actually impact equity. So that thing I wanted to kind of talk about. So through the lens of both climate change, climate resilience to climate change, and then the protection of the disadvantaged communities that live in the Delta.
Eric, do you have an answer for Chris's questions?
Well, certainly, I think the latter point about protecting disadvantaged communities, I think that's generally captured through the consistent themes here about, protecting Delta water supply, ensuring compatibility with Delta values for any water supply reliability proposal. I think that's embedded pretty well throughout. Climate change, I don't know how exactly to, that's kind of a given that we're going to be experiencing and needing to adapt to. And so I just view all of these through that understanding that will be a filter that we have to look at these different items through as well. If there's something specific to climate change that relates to the Delta, then I think it would be important to call that out. I'm not sure how that would get built into any of these water strategic objectives.
Flood control would be an important one. I testified to the DCA that they need to do flood control as mitigation for community benefits because
we'll get to that. That's a different section on the strategic objectives.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Eric, I think Sam might have a comment on this topic.
Yeah, you're running the meeting, Mr. Chair. If you want me to keep track of who's asking to speak, I can certainly do so, but I'll defer to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, see, Sam, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I want to just ask a quick question. Is this is the same document we looked at the last meeting? Is that right?
Yes.
It was on the agenda for the last meeting, but we didn't spend much time with it because we ran out of time to do it justice.
So I'm hearing a theme here. It sounds like people are having comments on things other than the commission staff's proposed revisions, and that potentially proposing additional revisions. And I'm curious, just as a process or procedure here, are we opening this up to new comments that were not proposed by commission staff or by Eric? And if so, that's all right, but do we need to approve these first? And then will we have the opportunity to propose additional revisions? I'm just trying to get straight what the request is tonight. Is it to add additional comments or to approve the ones that have been proposed?
Really either one, Sam. If there's any deviation from this would be great to hear it. And
thanks.
I'm taking notes as we're discussing this.
Got it. I'll sit and listen.
So Chris had asked a question about climate change. I think Eric, you answered that the governor's been clear. There are numerous statutes and regulations. I think Chris was asking, acknowledging, I think you would acknowledge that, and just asking, Chris, were you asking for the addition of climate change to be specified or not in this document?
Yeah, I think it should be a good theme that we need to call out as one of the headers or one of the objectives, because this is the reality we are facing today. And to the extent then that we're able to call it out to show that all the efforts being undertaken here, in particular in the area of water supply and the hardening of our infrastructure, are designed to be responsive to the threat of sea level rise, and then the other impacts of climate change in our region. So what I can do is sort of kind of prolonging the debate here. If we're going to delay or actually postpone further action on this pending per the vice chair's request, perhaps I can call out a few things and then maybe send an update or comment to Eric. So in that case, we can move on.
Very good. So Chris, you mentioned something I thought I neglected to say. So we agendized this and staff's prepared the report. I think it's important that we move through and talk about it, keep the process going. At the end of the process, it makes sense, for the committee as a whole to decide, do we want to discuss this more in line with what the vice chair requested, or do we feel like we've gone through it, well enough and provided our input to both the commission and staff? I don't think we can quite reach that decision point yet in the discussion, but that's my intention to follow that path. Okay. Any further comments in the water section? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Eddie. Agriculture, big topic. Any comments, questions, additions, deletions, suggestions in the agriculture section?
Yeah, this is Lindsay. So I've read Barbara's comments, and I read through this, first, and then saw Barbara's comments, and I wholeheartedly agree with Eric, where I believe that the changes in this section reflect where things are at right now. I appreciate, Barbara's willingness to go out and get more, talk with more farmers, get more knowledge, get more data, that type of thing. But I actually like that these are vague, broad statements, because agriculture in the Delta is so broad and encompassing that I think this adequately really addresses where agriculture's at right now within the Delta. Additionally, it doesn't do any overreaching as far as things, I think, removing things like farm labor housing. I mean, that really isn't in the kind of purview, I think, of the DPC, and so I think taking out some of those specifics is a good method and a good model, and really looking at how to promote, protect, preserve ag is really, I think, the direction we need to be going in, especially in light with the pressures of the Delta tunnels, especially in light of everything that DCA is trying to do. I think that this is a good direction to go. I think it broadens the scope for the DPC. I think it really leaves a very open-ended, view of where the DPC can go with this and can address specific things as they do come up. And I actually don't think that this needs to kind of be held on to and wordsmithed and massaged for another 2 months. I think that we're going to come to a similar conclusion in 2 months that we could tonight. I'm not sure that additional input is going to change a lot of this language that much. So I don't think that this is exclusionary of any of the issues going on. And I actually don't have a problem at all with it being a very broad overarching direction for ag, because that is the nature of what we're dealing with within the Delta. So those are just my initial 2 cents.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any other comments, thoughts, questions, deletions, additions, scope?
I just would like to echo Lindsay's comments. I mean, of everybody here, I definitely think that Lindsay's opinion on this is something that I would definitely respect, just because of the work that she does. I respect everybody's opinions here, of course, but I just want to echo that. I don't think that it's worth spending another 2 months wordsmithing for an outcome that probably won't change. So thank you for explaining that really well, Lindsay. I appreciate it.
Great, thank you, Mariah. Any other comments, changes? Eric, I just want to add, A1 is good. In my experience, talking to my neighbors and other people in the Delta for a long time, that what really adds value to Delta Ag is to have primary or first step processing in the Delta. So that avoids trucking or distribution far away or some other issue that's an impediment or a barrier to the initial phase of processing different crops that looks different. So people know what I'm talking about. For example, walnuts, just 200-300 yards from me. Once the walnuts are harvested, they initially need to be dried out to a certain moisture level to make them market ready. So that's an example of a primary on-site ag processing function that takes place right there, and really helps, whether it's tomatoes or wine or tree crops, or there's a long list, fig drying, all kinds of stuff. So that's really important. And I know our county general plan review is coming up. And so one of the things that I'm going to focus on with some of my neighbors is making sure that Yolo County has adequate reserves set aside in its 10-year plan for the primary ag production and processing needs for the next 10 years. So we try to be forward thinking about what all that means to help people that are farming. Okay.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
This
Hey,
is
Rob.
Russ. I apologize for joining late. I had another meeting that just went way over. I was looking at the document for you're talking about the 2030 vision, right?
Yes.
So one of the things that I did note that, and I didn't see it, in the water section, it talks about, is there any reference to co-equal goals? Shouldn't that be a part of it?
Eric, what's staff thoughts on that?
Well, the co-equal goals are the law, so we're not trying to deny those. I think the way the co-equal goals get addressed in the water section is in objective 1.3.
Yeah.
So analyzing proposals for water supply reliability for their compatibility with Delta values. So,
well, I just think there's more value to state, as it says, consistent with the co-equal goals, only because under W1, it states water solutions that reduce reliance on Delta freshwater supplies. I have no idea what that means. I don't have a context. Are you guys suggesting options and alternatives? I don't get it. I know in the notes it says that's not what you want to do, but I would like to see a balance with the co-equal goals is kind of my comment.
yeah, well, certainly reducing reliance on the Delta is part of the statute along with the co-equal goals. So that's a fair comment, Russ. We're certainly utilizing language from the statute on reduced reliance. So I don't see a problem with adding that into W1.
Okay.
So being that we're back on water, my question that I'm looking at is why was W2 and W3 stricken out?
Eric?
We don't believe that, we don't believe we can effectively, well, it's in the margin note there. W2, basically, it means advocating for legislation and funding that protect Delta freshwater resources. We just feel that's kind of beyond our ability as a very small and lean state organization.
Okay.
W3 is picked up elsewhere. It's mentioned in regional economy. When we created the strategic plan in 2015, we had an influential commission member who thought everything was an issue related to an aquatic invasive species. And as Eddie Hard knows, aquatic invasive species are critically important and we recognize their importance, but the repetition was just unnecessary.
So in an easy way, a little bit beyond the scope and ability of here.
Well, it's addressed elsewhere.
Right.
It's in our strategic plan. It just doesn't need to be there 5 times over.
Okay, got it.
And currently it's literally in there 5 different ways saying the same thing. So that's part of the cleanup, just to make it a more useful and abbreviated, though without losing any flavor or any quality of comment document.
All right. Thank you.
All right, sounds good. And by the way, if anybody wants to go back to another section after we passed it, please just speak up. Okay, are we done with agriculture? Agriculture. Okay, moving on to levies and emergency response. Any comments on that section?
Yeah, just as intro to this, this is basically flood protection in the Delta. So recognizing that it's not just ensuring levees, which are critically important and really the foundation that everything we value in the Delta is built upon, but that also it involves emergency response in the case of preparing for flood and responding to if one does occur.
Eric, on page 3, VE6, could you just flesh that out for those that may not be familiar with the differences between public law 8499 and DWR bulletin 192.-82?
I will do my best, but I might refer to our flood entity expert, Chris Elias, on this as well. Public law 8499 is a federal statute, and it applies to the levees that are part of what we call the state plan of flood control, which are the state's responsibility, and the maintenance and or the improvement and recovery if there is a flood for those is paid for by the feds. DWR bulletin 192.82 is a levee geometry standard that the state of California, in this case, Department of Water Resources, adopted all the way back in 1982. It's very similar in its geometry to the federal standard. And what the Delta levee interests tell us is that they're focused on the state standard as opposed to the federal standard. Chris can probably do a better job of explaining why that is. They're very similar. It isn't really a significant distinction. The federal standard comes along with a lot of other maintenance responsibilities that we don't necessarily agree with here in California. But maybe Chris could chime in and correct any misstatements I made.
I think, Eric, you're right on the mark. There is the 8499 essentially is a requirement that you maintain the levee to the as-built condition. And then so that in the event there is, where you have an event and that levy system is breached or threatened in any way, then in that case, you'll be able to kind of show records that you did maintain it to the standard, but it still failed in some respects. And therefore, any damage that results, then you can get this federal money which is pursuant to the law 8499, then to get your reimbursement. If you don't maintain your levy system to that standard, then that gives the feds the ground to deny your claim for reimbursement to fix those levies. So then the 192 is basically the state equivalent, which tends to be a bit more stringent. And then there's just with respect then to the areas of divergence between state and federal, it includes things like, where do you need to have vegetation? Can you or can you not have vegetation on a levee system, as an example? The federal government will tell you no, but the state government says it is appropriate because, as Jim on the phone here can tell you, the vegetation helps to provide a riparian corridor that tends to lower the temperature of the river system, so that some of the species we have, like salmon and all that, can easily traverse the system without feeling threatened or without running into inhospitable waters. So, for lack of a better term, so vegetation helps to maintain good temperature for water, so that cold water fisheries can easily migrate up and down the system. So, but the federal government said they don't want the vegetation at the levee because it poses a risk. Because when the trees uproot because of wind or whatever, then they damage the levee. So there are schools of thought with very varying opinion in that. Without having to get into the weeds on this, basically the 8499 is a federal law. So thanks, Eric, for laying the foundation and explaining it very well.
Hey, Eric, this is Russ. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure thing, Russ. Go ahead.
Under 2.4, it says pursue Delta support improvements to the Delta. It might be easy to understand to describe the subventions as it's a reimbursement of maintenance, and the special project is a grant enhancement. Is basically a grant which enhances the levies and keeps it up to geometry standards.
Yeah, that's a good description of distinction between the two programs.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
PL 8499, can it be translated to how many years of flood protection?
Douglas, I think the answer to that is yes, but maybe Chris could elaborate. Maybe the answer is not yes. I don't know if it equates to a level of protection in relative to a 50-year versus 100-year flood.
Can I take a stab at it?
Yeah, Russ, thank you. You're an expert too.
Yeah, I'm a civil engineer, and I think that qualifies me. It's hard to say that the levy would be, once it's up to that standard, if it's, because remember, in the South Delta, they're trying to apply the standard throughout the entire, the Delta. And down in the South Delta, you have the issue of consolidation of peat soils underneath. So you can't say that in one area, it can last you 5 years, another area, it can last you 10 or 15 years in the northern, which may be true, but it's hard to say just catch all, it can last you 50 years. I don't think that's a statement that could be backed up with that, just because of the nature of what these levees are built upon. The soils. Is that clear enough?
Yes, I guess.
Because what happens is each RD district engineer does a 5-year assessments where it's under the DWR request for proposals of looking at what they will need for the next 5 years, and that's they have to go out there and survey it, use LiDAR data, and compare to the settlements that they're seeing in relation to their levy profiles.
Well, you are using the numbers like 5 years, 10 years, but the one that I'm familiar, that I know of is like the 50 years and 80 years and 100 years. So there is a difference.
Yeah, there is, but I think the levies in the Delta are much different than other Corps of Engineer levies in other states and other systems.
Eric, can I ask a question related to 2.4 as well? The governor, I believe last night, if I'm thinking this through carefully, signed the budget and sent it back to the legislature. Do you know, did the subvention program, special projects program survive the meat grinder of the budget process?
I don't know that for certain, Mr. Chair, but I'm all but certain that they are in there. They were in the governor's proposed budget in January. They were not suggested for any changes in the May revision. And I know that there's a lot of additions to the budget. It's possible that those programs might have had supplemental funding added to them. I haven't heard that yet, but I'll be looking at the details as soon as the budget bill is in print.
Very good, thank you.
I will be reporting a little bit later on. I just learned of some specific earmarks that were included in the baby budget bill, it's called. And some of those do touch the Delta. I'll mention those a little bit later, but they're not specific to the levy programs.
Very good, thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask a question? Matt Conover?
Yes, go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Since I haven't seen it, I can't tell whether or not you're including anything for the Cosumnes River, which has no dams on it and is unregulated and was cause for levee breaches in 2017 and caused the DWR McCormick-Williamson tract breaks that had to be half cut of the levee on the downstream side to the west end into the Cross Delta Channel connecting the Sacramento River to the San Joaquin at the Meadows, just down from the Meadows, it flows into McKellamey. And that could happen again. And that whole area north of there is scheduled by the Nature Conservancy with DWR to be mitigation flooding for habitat to offset the impacts of the tunnel. And there could be further flooding in between that time. They've pushed it back from 10 years to 40 years, but the forecast for weather coming out of the west and hitting the mountains is for increased cyclicality and extremes closer together. So we'll have more drought severity and more flooding severity all coming down those lateral streams out of the Sierras affecting the Delta. But when I asked for modeling to be done, it was said by the Delta Conservancy executive director that his discussions with the Sierra Conservancy was that it was too hard. And even without the numbers, perhaps there's some intermediate level of analysis that can be done to mitigate rather than keep buying more floodplain easements and put in some kind of dam up there for flood control so those kinds of impacts don't hit it. There's some deal gone on between Nature Conservancy and other enviro groups with PG&E or whoever owns that reservoir up there not to build another dam. But there's been a bill last session, just as COVID was hitting, introduced by Wood, that would eliminate liability for landowners who did habitat protection projects that later caused downstream destruction and death. That's pretty severe. I don't know if it passed, but that would be a good thing for somebody at a policy level to assess and see if it has potential for being included here in the policy discussions or later in your next update. Hopefully before then, because there could be close following of this drought with severe runoff on hardened soils from steeps in the Sierras.
So Matt, I think
some kind of flood control infrastructure would be the most helpful thing if you could call for that.
Eric, any thoughts on that?
No, but Matt, I did just email you if you still have the Yahoo email account. I did just email you this document. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I see that Jen Qualick from Assemblyman Frazier's office is on the meeting as well. Welcome, Jen. And
thank
Claire
you so
Cooey.
much, Eric.
Yeah, Claire Cooey, a member of the public as well. So let me send this to you both as well, so you can follow in the fun here. So
Well, I actually have a copy of the plan up, so that's great.
wonderful, thanks.
Yes.
Eric, I think what I heard Matt also suggesting or asking is whether this document should include as an objective support for a broader based forecasting tool of waters, extreme events, drought, et cetera. Certainly as it affects the Delta, that's a big nut to crack. As Matt pointed out in talking to Campbell over the Conservancy. Is that something that you think should be added to this document?
I'm not sure I followed what, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do maybe too many things here. I'm not sure I followed that, but anything that has specificity about any particular subregion of the Delta, it's just not really appropriate to have that included in this plan. This is intended to be pretty high level. And if I heard that right, I think what I'm hearing about levee repair, recovery, after flood events, ensuring that Delta residents are represented in decision-making processes, that there's reliable funding for these improvements. I think all of that is covered in these proposed objectives.
Yes, I see that in 2.5. I think I heard an element that was new in Matt's comments about forecasting and forward looking to help folks prepare for more extreme events in the future. And I just wanted to, I thought that might have some value as an objective. Is certainly a big ask. Modeling is always tough.
We're not going to do modeling.
Okay.
Others will. I hope others will. And if there's some aspect of supporting that where others are trying to do it, I'm kind of reading on the fly here, but I'm pretty sure that would already be covered here. But it's certainly not something that we have the capability, capacity, or ability to do ourselves.
Understand. Okay, any other comments?
Synchronize up with the Delta Adapts effort going on. I forget who's doing that, but they're doing 2 phases and they've finished one and they're looking at infrastructure improvements for the Delta now.
Yeah, that's.
I think Delta Stewardship Council's doing that.
Yes,
that's right. It's the Delta Stewardship Council, and the Commission's participating in that. We certainly will be a voice for Delta interests in those discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any other comments on the levees and emergency response section? Moving over to regional economy. Regional economy. Any thoughts, questions, comments on that section? None.
And Mr. Chair, there was a comment earlier about invasive aquatic weeds, and so that is addressed here in 4.1. So this is basically our strategic objective related to invasive aquatic weeds. Well,
Okay,
more broadly stated as invasive aquatic species, because it's not just plants. Now we, potentially have animals as well, including nutria that would fall under this objective.
Eric, looking at E3 on page 3, similar question to what I asked before. Do you know if the current budget in its, I guess, almost final form perhaps, includes money for the Delta investment?
No,
And then I see Gina with a hand up. No, okay.
no, it does not.
Gina?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, one of my comments from previous meetings on E4 was to keep that in. And my main point of that was climate change and tracking that. So I don't know if that helped. And I'm sorry, I can't remember who brought it up earlier in the meeting. Address the climate change issue if we just made E4 just a little bit more specific, or had one of the subvision whatever's address that there. But that was the main reason I had advocated for that staying in, was to identify and address environmental factors like affecting levees or so forth.
That was Chris that made that comment earlier. Eric, what do you think?
You know, from my reading of E4, I think that could, now that I'm kind of reading it afresh, because this is original wording from our 2015 plan, I mean, I think it could address things like harmful algal blooms.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's really what it was most intended to address. I'm having a hard time connecting back to the discussion that we had on this item when the strategic plan was adopted in 2015. I don't know that we were, I think maybe we started to, HABs were on our radar screen back then. They've certainly become much more important in the years since. So that's what I think of most when I read that strategic plan objective. And our commission has asked us to, they understand that we're not going to be able to prevent harmful algal blooms, but if they did ask us to play a role in helping to get the word out about where those are occurring. And we'll continue to, strive to do whatever we can to alert the Delta public about the presence of HABs wherever they exist. But I think I would need some help to link that beyond something like harmful algal blooms.
Yeah, my thought was with climate change and sea level rise, that those are environmental factors that are going to negatively impact the economic sustainability of the Delta and the levee system. So that was one of the reasons I had requested originally for E4 to stay in there, was thinking of those things. I mean, I think it applies to a lot of factors. I mean, environmental factors could also be sedimentation. So
yeah.
I was just suggesting that if we did want to plug in climate change, this might be a good place, but I'm sure there could be somewhere else too. That was all.
One thought, Chair Pruner, this is Eddie Hard with State Parks, is to augment under E4, 4.1 to have a comma after invasive aquatic species that speciate the fact that would be harmful algal blooms, comma, and sea level rise. Because 4.1 seems to add some clarity to E4 and more specific wording, right? By calling out invasives, but we're talking also what Gina brought up. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think what we've learned in the first part of the Stewardship Council's Delta Adapts project, the climate vulnerability assessment, is that the changing climate effects are really, at present, they have to do with temperatures, warmer winters, hotter summers. Sea level rise is one of those, slower moving trains, maybe gaining momentum, but not really exhibiting itself on the landscape just yet. But the potential is for that to be significant. I don't know why I raised that. It's just really a distinction between what's an immediate concern and maybe you should take, precedence and how we address it versus, you know, a slower, longer horizon moving train, meaning
Eric,
sea level rise.
Eric, this is Russ again. My input to that, just because we've been looking at that as well internally, is with sea level rise and the design of the geometry of the levee. You're right, it's a longer trend, slower trend, but I think it's well to be mentioned, because part of that can be designed into the freeboard. And we kind of have that with certain standards, that it's designed into the freeboard. And as we move forward with future levee special projects, that I believe is going to be a component of the design.
Okay, thank you, Russ.
Yeah, Russ, that's an excellent point, because that's part of the adaptation strategy, is that type of structural improvement you just talked about, which is freeboard, but there could also be some natural features that could be incorporated into levee system, again, to help mitigate or temper the impact of sea level rise as well.
That's a very good point. Yes, I agree.
So coming out of this discussion, we've got the comment that Eddie suggested in 4.1 after line 2, after the word species. Is there consensus on adding particular wording at 4.1 or 4, given the discussion we've just had, or specific suggestions? Or are we, we agreed that?
Yeah, certainly the
Go ahead,
addition
Eric.
of harmful algal blooms makes a lot of sense. I think anything related to adapting levees to sea level rise should probably be in the previous levee and emergency response section. And I've got a note there. I haven't quite figured out how to suggest specific wording for that, but the ideas I hear loud and clear. So.
Very good. Okay, I just want to make sure we're capturing those things. Looking at 4.2, which was deleted, I know Barbara had a comment about
you know
that.
what?
And as
Hey,
I
Mark,
understand,
yeah. I'm sorry. Sorry to interject.
Yeah.
A possible way to approach that, because if you call out sea level rise, you could call it other stressors that would be incorporated in the design, because you also have seismic too. And that's, more predicated. It could happen anytime versus a sea level climate change considerations in your design over a period of time, which you could design for. So maybe the tactic could be, say, other stressors to the levees, and that just would be a catch-all for all that. I don't know, just a suggestion.
Okay, very good.
Great, thank you.
So I just want to make sure that Barbara's comment in 4.2, she asked why that was deleted. As I understand her, email, and I think the answer is it's pretty tough to define or enforce or implement what it means to beautify Delta roadways. Eric, I don't mean to speak for staff, but did I sum up what the reason is for the deletion?
Yeah, we never knew what to make of that. I mean, my recollection when this was originally discussed was that it had to do with the work of either county road crews, or maybe it was Caltrans that were out trimming vegetation along Delta roadways. I'm assuming as a road safety measure. If anyone's driven the River Road, there's areas where the vegetation is pretty much on the white line. And that's my recollection, but I can't say for certain that was the intention. If that was the intention, I'm certainly torn. I don't think I want to get in the way of road safety. If something else was meant by beautification of Delta roadways, then I just think it needs to be better defined so that we can understand what that means. Now, having said that, we try to keep these strategic objectives pretty high level, so it would be ideal not to make it too prescriptive, but this one I think needs a little more prescription just because I really don't know what is intended by that. And truthfully, if it's about cutting vegetation that has a connection to road safety, I'm not sure that the commission will buy into that.
Okay, I just want to make sure we capture Barbara's comment and everyone can hear what you're thinking.
Yeah, if there's something that can define that a little bit more specifically, that would be helpful. And maybe there's a good reason to include a variation of that. But as this is currently worded, we just don't know what to make of it.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions, thoughts on levies and emergency response? Moving on, regional economy. That's what we were on. My mistake. Any other comments on regional economy? Delta Heritage. I know I have a question on 2.4 was eliminated in the note. I don't know what the Clarksburg GA is. That Japanese school?
Yeah, it's called the Gakuin. It's the Japanese language school.
And that is now a home.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said in the comment that an item is covered in 2.3. I don't think you meant 2.3 of this section, because there is no 2.3.
No, actually, forgive me. The wording, the numbering here is off. H3 should be 2.3. I don't know where that came. Oh, wait. No, you're right. It should have said H.3.
Okay,
Sorry for that.
So what people know, and that's down the road.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. Actually, that is, I'm not sure that's covered in H.3. Historic preservation projects. H.2 is what we meant there. Sorry about that.
Okay, H.2. So what I'll just, for folks that's in my neighborhood, so the Japanese school was just having a really hard time with funding, et cetera, and so on. A beautiful place on the interior. So one of the long-term members of the family's young guy bought it, moved in there. He's done, I think, a really good job of preserving certainly the exterior and protecting it as a residence, but he's also done a good job of preserving much of the interior look and feel while creating a home. I'm guessing there's debate about whether that constitutes preservation of Delta heritage or not, but he took a building that was just falling into disrepair and he reused it in another form. Any comments on Delta heritage, changes, thoughts? Rec and tourism, page 5. Rec and tourism. Any final comments? Not final. Any comments, questions, thoughts on recreation and tourism? Any comments, questions, thoughts on education and outreach, page 6?
Oh, sorry. Okay, regarding the how we prevent the vessels being abandoned, I'm thinking that is there such a thing as a boat junkyard?
Eddie?
So Douglas, what specific section under recreation and tourism are you?
3.1. 3.1 is says coordinate partners, partnership, and reduce abandoned vessels.
Yes.
Yeah, so
So
I'm just
Top
thinking,
of page 6.
yeah, so the Division of Boating and Waterways under State Parks funds local counties in the Delta. I believe right now we have 11 counties in the Delta, of which there are 5 that have marine patrols. And of those counties that have marine patrols that boating funds, they also have a safe and abandoned vessel program, or SAVE. And each one of those counties has an allocation of funds to remove recreational vessels from waterways. Commercial vessels is under the State Lands Commission, but recreational vessels, so whatever county it is in, you can report that either directly to me and I can send that in, or I can send out through Eric the contact, or pardon me, Mark, he can send it out to the group for everyone to have that point of contact. So we do have currently in Contra Costa County, Sacramento County, Solano County, San Joaquin County, a vessel abandonment program where citizens can call in and say, hey, this vessel's at this latitude, longitude, we need to get it out of the water.
Hi, good evening.
Hey,
This is
Katie.
Jen Qualick with Assemblymember Jim Frazier's team. And I did want to highlight, which I'm sure you guys might already know, that there was $12 million approved in the budget for the abandoned vessel project
Wow,
program.
that's great.
So Assemblymember Frazier did make those calls to the Marine Patrol yesterday, but that is some very good news.
Yeah,
Great.
Jen, that is excellent news. And
Wow.
that was something I was going to report on later, but I'm glad that you mentioned it. I wasn't sure that that was the handiwork of Assemblyman Frazier, but I was pretty sure it was. Thank you for confirming that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, the what they call the baby budget bill, which were items that were not included in the governor's proposed January nor May budget, was passed by the legislature, and I signed by the governor as well, and it included funding for a lot of specific projects. That particular $12 million is going to the State Lands Commission.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure that they're going to be making grants to local agencies and others, but that'll go a good way toward removing some of the backlog, maybe a good chunk of the backlog of abandoned vessels in Delta waterways.
Well,
Very
thanks for letting
significant.
me share, and pardon me for speaking out of turn.
No, it wasn't. I'm so glad you were here to share that. And I just wasn't sure if that was the Assemblyman Frazier's handiwork. I assumed it was, but thank you for confirming it is. And
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
yeah, thanks for reporting on that, Jen. That's something that we'll be tracking and making sure the Delta community knows about as the State Lands Commission rolls out that program.
Good news.
Very.
Okay, anything else on recreation tourism? Education outreach. Outreach. Education outreach. Next section, commission leadership and development. We want all our commission members to be fully trained. Page 7. Any comments, questions, thoughts, additions, deletions? None. Funding, last section. Any comments on funding? Good. Well, let me just recap. Going back to any section? Any final thoughts on any specific section? If not, then what I want to do is ask if the committee is ready with the comments that we've made. And Eric, we haven't gone down to exact wording here, but mainly really in a thematic way. With the comments that we provided, are we, do we think we completed our work on this document or not? And I guess what I'm thinking of is really an action item or at least a consensus. So let's formulate this as an action item so we're clear. If there's a motion to close our formal review, not as individuals, we can always provide input. But is there a motion to close our formal review with the comments that we provided today to this document? Or is there a desire more? We need a motion on that one way or the other, I think.
I'm happy to make that motion.
I'm happy to second that motion.
Motion by Lindsay, second by Mariah. The motion. So I propose that as an alternative. Lindsay, is the motion to close our formal review of this document?
Correct.
Okay. Motion to close formal review, second by Mariah. Any questions, debate, comments? Floor is open. We're all good, ready to vote. Eric, I think we're on Zoom, so I think we need to take a roll call vote, don't we?
Yeah, well, let me first ask, are there any of the voting members, are there any no votes to this? Because if there are, we will take a roll call vote. I hope I'm not being presumptuous here. And not to put anyone on the spot, but if anyone would request a roll call vote, otherwise we can do it by voice.
Why don't I do this? What I've seen done before, good suggestion. So the chair, without objection, the chair would just order that the roll call be substituted for the vote. This is where if you disagree or if you want to vote no or you want to abstain, you speak up. That prompts a vote procedurally. Waiting 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the roll call it'll be substituted for the vote. That makes the vote unanimous. Very good, thank you. We did something.
Yay!
No, thank you, members of DPAC. Thanks, Mr. Chair. That helps. I do have a couple of notes for items that where I'm going to make some adjustments to this language, and I will follow up specifically with those parties. Chris, Russ Ryan, Gina, specifically. Yeah.
Very good. All right.
And Eddie as well. He made a suggestion for amending the invasive aquatic species objective. So
we got to capture that comment that Eddie wants for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, item 4, update on DPC activities. Eric.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted to get that note down before it completely slipped my mind. Yeah, a couple of things I wanted to report on. First is that the commission has been involved with the, let me back up. Department of Water Resources is moving forward on a tidal habitat restoration project at Lookout Slough, which is in the Cache Slough region of the Delta, Solano County. The certification of consistency for that project, certification of consistency with the Delta Plan, which DWR submitted, was appealed by a handful of parties, including Delta interests, Central Delta Water Agency, some of the nearby reclamation districts, a group called Liberty Island Access, which is composed of recreational users of Liberty Island Ecological Reserve. And the commission, as we have the option to, chose to participate in this appeal of Delta Plan certification, and we presented comments to the council members. We provided testimony at an initial hearing back in late May. Most recently, the council staff has put out a draft staff determination on whether based on the evidence presented, the certification is should move forward, or whether the appeals should be granted and the project be sent back to DWR. And the Stewardship Council staff is recommending that the project be what's called remanded to DWR, meaning sent back to DWR to correct deficiencies in their certification of consistency. And interestingly, around the recreation-related issues, the Lookout Slough project would create notches in a levee that also is a county road that provides recreational users access to Liberty Island Ecological Reserve, which is a unit that is administered by California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and probably something that Gina von Klompenberg's very familiar with. She and I used to work on that a bit back in the day when I had a different hat on. So that matter is going to the Stewardship Council at a hearing on July 15th and 16th with a staff recommendation that may or may not change based on comments that council staff requested. Anyway, this is a very long explanation to say we've been putting a fair amount of time into the Lookout Slough project, and really because we believe it is important to that the Stewardship Council is appropriately considering the impacts on Delta recreation from proposed projects, whether it's the Delta Tunnel project, or in this case, a habitat restoration project that are intended to accomplish the co-equal goals for the Delta. And I'm really proud of the work that had been done, and I hope that the staff, the council staff's recommendation will carry forward to the full council and that they will endorse it. But it's really important that even as we go about accomplishing these important primary objectives in the Delta, that we not lose track of the fact that we're supposed to accomplish those co-equal goals in a way that protects and enhances Delta agriculture, cultural values, natural resources, and recreation. And so if the council staff concurs with this staff draft determination, it'll be a very powerful message to anyone proposing a project in the Delta that they've got to take this stuff seriously. And unfortunately, my opinion is DWR did not take this item seriously. They all but brushed it off. And I think it's important, whether for this project or whether for future projects, including the Delta Tunnel project, if that ever gets to the Stewardship Council for a certification of consistency under the Delta plan, to ensure that, you know, we have voices speaking up for unique Delta values and that they are appropriately considered in this process. So that's one thing I wanted to report on, and that was a rather long disquisition, but if any of you have any questions or comments or would like to know more, I'd be happy to talk with you offline. The other thing I wanted to report on is that the work on the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta National Heritage Area is proceeding. We will have a bi-monthly meeting of our National Heritage Area Advisory Committee. And some of the members of our advisory committee are also members of the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. So thank you for those doing double duty. That meeting will be on Thursday afternoon. Anyone is welcome to join. We're still at a very preliminary stage in pulling together our management plan, as we are required to do, but the advisory committee, the task groups working under the advisory committee are well engaged and moving forward with good advice that we expect will inform a series of public meetings that we will hold toward the end of August or the early part of September, where we'll start to take out information about what our thinking is on the management plan for the National Heritage Area, and seek advice and input from the Delta community on that. So more details to come. We don't have the date set just yet, but we expect to very shortly. That's a major component of commission staff work at present. And then the Great Delta Trail is a statutory mandate that the commission has had on its books for 15 years now, actually. But we are starting to work in earnest on the master planning for the Great Delta Trail. The Great California Delta Trail is intended to connect the Bay Trail in eastern Contra Costa County with the Sacramento River Trail as it exists in both the cities of Sacramento and West Sacramento. That's a whole lot of delta in between those two existing trail systems. But that's what the Great Delta Trail is designed to do, and we are midway through a master planning process, again, that some of people on this call are participating in, and we'd certainly welcome any additional participation. And we do expect to have some public materials related to the Great Delta Trail coming out toward the end of the summer as well. So I think by the next time DPAC meets, we will have both more information on that, but also perhaps an opportunity to seek DPAC comment. And then finally, and you can see me fumbling with my papers here because I just had it in front of me. But finally, I wanted to report on a few of the items that were included in what we call the baby budget bill. Jen Qualick already reported on the most significant, which was the $12 million for abandoned and derelict vessel removal by the State Lands Commission. But also here are some other Delta-specific projects, not quite as handsomely funded. The city of Pittsburgh received $400,000 to continue its restoration of the historic California Theater. City of Antioch received $2.2 million to renovate the Nick Rodriguez Community Center. I think that's also a senior center in the city of Antioch. Our friends at the Clarksburg Fire Protection District got $350,000 for a new fire engine. Congratulations, Mr. Chair. And State Parks received $1.4 million for the renovation of the John Marsh house at the, I think it's the Marsh Historic Site. I'm probably butchering the name of that unit, but it's the old Marsh home near Brentwood, which has great historic significance in the European era in the Delta region, going back to the early European period in the Delta region. So congratulations in order to those entities. There might be other little gems tucked in, but that's what I found in a real quick glance right before the DPAC meeting this afternoon. I will look and see if there were any additional augmentations to Delta levy funding. I suspect not, but they could have made their way in. So, and those are the high notes I wanted to hit, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if anyone has any questions about other commission activities that I should have included, happy to entertain those.
I see Russ has his hand up. Russ?
Yes, thank you, Mark. Hey, Eric, on the National Heritage Management Plan, there's a deadline that I think it's the end of this year. And so my question is, first two questions. First question is, do you anticipate meeting that deadline? And second question is, once you get the draft management plan, do you foresee bringing it before DPAC?
First off, the draft management plan, yes. Even though we have a advisory committee that's working with us on that, I would like to seek input from DPAC. It would provide a different set of input into that document. So yes on that. Good question about the timeline. According to the statute, we're supposed to have the management plan completed to the Secretary of Interior by March of 2022. We do not expect to meet that date. it's not a, we're not heavily penalized if we don't meet that date. The most penalty that can be imposed upon us is that the National Park Service can elect to withhold the federal funding that they provide to our National Heritage Area, which currently totals about $150,000 per fiscal year. Once we have an approved management plan, that will increase by probably about a factor of 3. But currently, on an annual basis, we receive approximately $150,000 from the federal government. The National Park Service, they administer that funding. They can elect to continue providing that to us. We do have legislation in Congress from Congressman Garamendi that would give all of these national heritage areas that were created in the class of 2019 an additional year to complete their management plans. So that would enable us to complete it by March of 2023. No telling where that legislation will go, or even whether the National Park Service will administratively grant us that extension, as we believe they have the capability of doing. But we're going to continue working on this, even though we don't expect to meet a March 2022 completion date. We think we should have it done within about a half year of that. And even if we don't have a formal extension of our management plan deadline, we hopefully will be right in between federal appropriations so that we won't be affected by that.
Thank you, Eric. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Any, just looking real quick. Oh, Eric, could you mind taking off the share screen and we can go to gallery view?
Yes.
If possible. There we go. All right, good. Flip around. All right, good, good, good. Any other comments, any announcements, anything for the good of the order? Counting once, twice. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Actually, Mr. Chair,
I guess, you know what? We never said that.
Before you do, there was an agenda item for discussing the format of future DPAC meetings, whether to meet in person, go back to meeting in person, or
I'm sorry, yes,
incorporate an in-person or online option.
Thank you, Eric. So my sense about that is, at the moment, I don't think we've got crystal clear guidance from the State Department of Health on this question, but whatever the state approves come our next meeting, which will be in late August, early September, we'll abide by that. And Eric, you know, I think I would like to think about maybe having a hybrid meeting. I'm not sure if the technology that we have will support that or not, but certainly we get greater participation with Zoom. Certainly there's better benefit by meeting in person. And so if there's a way to kind of blend the two benefits from those two formats, I'll talk to Eric and see if we can try to have our cake and eat it too, as it were.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We're trying to figure out if there's good technology that would be also affordable to the commission, that we can utilize that, whether it's for DPAC or whether it's even for our commission meetings. And I'm all ears and eyes when it comes to any great technologies that people have utilized themselves or been a part of with meetings. I just heard about one the other day that I'm going to look into when the tape of the meeting comes out, because as it was described to me, it sounds like what could work well for a group like DPAC, where you've got a group of people in the meeting room, in the primary meeting room, we'll call it, but they're joined by people in Zoom squares, but it's done in a way that it feels, you don't feel a great distance between the people in the physical meeting room and the people with their Zoom squares on the screen. Almost sounds too good to be true. It might be, but I will take a look at it. But if anyone else knows of any formats, technologies, services, the gold standard, of course, is to have real live humans there filming, operating cameras, cutting from camera to camera so that you clearly and closely capture what's going on within the room. And then people can tune into that remotely. It doesn't really bring them into the meeting so much. So I'm not sure if that is really a good solution either. But I guess the real question for people first and foremost, and maybe not everyone has to answer it, but if anyone has a strong feeling, is just about even the idea of a limited number of people coming back together in a common meeting room, and then figuring out a way to patch others into that.
Yeah, I mean, the governor's executive order expires September 30th. So we're going to start seeing all public meetings go back to, or at least some form of an in-person, because they're not going to be able to just meet exclusively virtually. So, you know, I definitely think we should be moving in that general direction. I'm definitely not opposed to hybrid. I think that's going to be the wave of the future, period. So I think investing in some sort of technology to do that, I think you'll see a lot of groups doing that in various capacities. So, but I definitely think we should be moving towards that direction of having, you know, at least some in-person components, and just to kind of follow suit with what other entities will be complying with as well.
Yeah, thank you for throwing out that September 30th date. I hesitated to mention it because I forgot the date that it was the executive orders were effective until. Although it should be noted that there might be a succeeding executive order that will either extend those provisions or provide some alteration to those provisions.
Yep, absolutely. September, that's the date we have now, but that can change.
Yeah.
At the drop of a hat. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the meeting format? We're all good. We're all good. No thoughts. All right. Thank you everyone for joining. We're ending early. Great. See you next time.
Hey, Mr. Chair,
yes.
Since we have most of the DPAC members here, the only concern about the first Tuesday in September is that it's really, well, the first concern is that it's the day after Labor Day, which may or may not be a concern. But my primary concern is that we will already have posted our commission meeting agenda by September 7th. And just because of the quirks of when the days fall on the calendar. And that's not the end of the world. It just means that if DPAC does take any action, unless we can anticipate that action, we don't really have the ability to adjust the commission meeting agenda. As opposed to tonight's meeting, we still haven't finalized our commission meeting agenda for July 15th. So whatever things you did today could influence that. So that's a long way of saying, does the group want to meet on September 7th or try to meet the Tuesday before, or even go with a different date entirely?
I'll just go ahead and pop in. I will be out of state that on September 7th. So I am definitely in favor of moving it whichever way works. I won't be able to participate that day. So.
Okay. So Mariah, you're available 31st as an example, correct?
I will be out of state the 1st through the 7th. So yes, the 31st I would be available.
Okay. Any other thoughts? So Eric, what I'm thinking on this topic is let's just maybe in the near term poll the entire committee. That way we capture the thoughts of folks that aren't here and fold them into this discussion to try to maximize input. And then you and I can talk in the next couple of days about 31st, the 7th, or maybe another date. Robin, did you want to say something?
Oh, I'm very open. Thank you.
You're welcome. Douglas, is your hand up? Nope. Okay. That's okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah. Have a good evening, everyone. And let's go remove some vessels from the Delta.
Indeed.